Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, host and head bookologist here at the Get Literate podcast. I'm a book-loving, notebook-hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. On this podcast, we explore the power of bookology and leading literate lives. We talk all things books and reading and notebooks and writing, mixed in with mindful practices and creativity to create lives we love. You can expect regular weekly episodes focused on 3 books you need to know about on a bookish theme and how to bring those themes to life in our actual lives too. You can also expect author interviews, notebooking inspiration, and topics to help us grow through what we go through and take inspired action to make our lives better. So grab a notebook and your TBR list and let's get literate. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Get Literate podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie, here with an introduction to today's special guest. If you know me, you know I live by my calendar. I am an upholder in Gretchen Rubin's 4-tendency framework, and if it happens, it's because of my calendar. If it's there, I get it done. If it's not, I can't promise you anything. But not only do I use my calendar to live my daily life, but I like to use my calendar to try to enhance my daily life too, celebrating those lesser known holidays that can give me a new book to read, a new thing to experience, or just something whimsical to think about. For example, did you know that this past April 12th was Grilled Cheese Day? Maybe you read Grilled Cheese, Yes Please by Tim Klein, like I did. But this month, we have a literate holiday, I would call it, dedicated to the entire month of April. It is National Letter Writing Month. And what better holiday to celebrate than a holiday that embraces writing and notebooking and letter writing and snail mail, our favorite. So to celebrate throughout the month, I purchased a set of cards from Tiny and Snail. It was recommended from a fellow Get Literate Patreon member, and I am so glad she passed them along. These cards are beautiful. Not only are the cards beautiful, but the packaging you get when they arrive is beautiful too. But then the story behind Tiny and Snail is really what makes it beautiful in my mind. And so I instantly reached out, asked Tiny and Snail to come onto the podcast to celebrate National Letter Writing Month with me. And that's why Lee, AKA Tiny, is here today. So welcome to the Get Literate podcast. I am so glad you're here.
I am too. It's just a joy to meet you today.
Well, thank you. And I feel like I need to start with a big thank you to you both because your cards are beautiful. And I know listeners cannot see them, but I am holding them in my hands. They are not only beautiful, but they feel beautiful. They feel luxurious. You've got this craft colored envelopes that go with it. You've got these beautiful inserts and stickers. They're just gorgeous inside and out, and the cards as well as your philosophy. But I think the thing I loved the most was the follow-up thank you video. Your daughter
Aw.
kind of crept in. It's a beautiful company. Beautiful company in so many ways, from the products to the people behind it and all of those little touches that you're putting on it to make it such a beautiful experience. I can't wait to talk. I can't wait to talk.
Aw. Yeah, well, I know the listeners can't hear, but I'm grinning ear to ear, so.
Yes. I know this is the one of the only times that I wish we were also on YouTube, is so I could hold up the cards and people could see the
Oh,
happy.
yeah. Yeah, well, they can go to the website.
That's right. So why don't we start at the beginning with introductions? Can you tell listeners a little bit about who you are, about Tiny and Snail, and about that really inspiring story that I know you're going to share all around it? All the details.
Oh boy, that's a lot. Okay, so I guess the place it always starts is my sister and I grew up together drawing at the kitchen counter. Our mom would be making dinner, we'd be drawing, and we'd always we had pantry doors, and she had one side and I had the other. And her side was always filled like very productive, just, she's sort of, I don't know she's spontaneous with her art, I guess. And I'm very meticulous and careful. And so like I'd have a few drawings up on my wall, but and then yeah, I just loved art so much. And so when it came to what I would do for college, like art was the easy answer. And so I studied art and painting in college, and then I graduated, and like probably most art majors, I had no idea how to make any money after I graduated. So I ended up doing a number of things. I baked desserts for a while professionally, and
Didn't know
I
that.
um and eventually I was living in Kentucky with my boyfriend, now husband, and my sister was moving like north south every 6 months with her husband because he's a golf pro. He teaches golf lessons and he had to move with the weather. Um, and I was really lonely. I was about an hour away from anybody I considered a friend, and I um like yeah, we had a couple goats that I saw way more frequently than people. Um and dogs, but, anyway, like, whenever I talked to Grace on the phone, I was always like, things were right again, and, like, I felt like she was guiding me in the right direction. So, eventually, I moved back home to Rapid City, South Dakota, and I got a job working with Habitat for Humanity, um, and I love building, I love using my hands to make things, and so, um and it just felt like the right thing to do. And so I was the only female on the job site, and I was doing like mostly like drywall stuff, but uh I'd get to do whatever.
Yeah.
And I felt like one of the guys kind of.
Yeah.
So we were working on a house, a two-story house, and that day we were putting up rafters uh with a machine called a telehandler. And, it's it's like a huge forklift with a long arm on it. We'd scoop up a rafter and put it up on the house, and my job was to hold a guide rope that was attached to the rafter. Um, and wait, maybe I should back up. Grace and I started Tiny and Snail before I was doing this job. Uh, we were about a year in. And so this was my day job, and then on the nights and weekends, I would do Tiny and Snow
Yeah.
stuff.
So creating
Um,
big things in the day, like literal big
yeah,
things, and then your art on the side.
yeah. So, everybody's just trying to make it work.
Yes.
Um, so yes, on August 14th, I was building this house, and it rained really hard at lunch, but we decided to keep going, and the telehandler slipped in the mud and fell on me. Um, the arm, like I was I don't remember any of it. The last thing I remember was feeling like a little mouse leading a brontosaurus and having
Mm.
that thought. And then I don't know, I just tipped over, and my T4, T5 in my spine burst, and instantly gave me a spinal cord injury. Um, and it took like 45 minutes for them to get the telehandler off of me. And all the while oh, well, this is amazing too. One of my coworkers was a former Marine. He jumped immediately out of the top floor, came down, took off his belt, and wrapped around my leg as a tourniquet. And,
Oh,
I'd be every time I tell that story, I'm like, "Wow, I am so lucky to be here talking with you." Um, so then I spent, 29 days in the ICU and, 6 months in rehab, and, um, yeah, I don't know, I went from, like, basically feeling like a baby in the ICU, not being able to do anything for myself. Um, to then, like, 7 months later in rehab, like, learning how to cook again by myself, learning how to drive with hand controls, uh, learning how to just take care of my body again. Um, there's a lot involved in a paralyzed body, so,
Yeah. Start
um,
over, literally starting over.
yeah, yeah. Um, but, part of my recovery, like, I was approached about being an illustrator for a kids book. I don't know if you know this part.
I
Um,
do. It's one of the things I was hoping to talk about later. So yes, yeah.
um, they were looking for an illustrator in a wheelchair, and they had been looking before my accident had happened, and um, yeah, my name just came up, and I submitted drawings well, first I read the script and I was like, "This is nuts." Like, this dog is my dog. And if I wrote a children's book, this would probably be it, but I'd probably have to change some things because it would be like too much like my life.
Right.
Um,
It was
and
meant to
so
be.
it was. I mean, it totally was. It's called Best Day Ever. Um, for the previous, like, few years, I had a mug that was my favorite from a thrift store. It said "Best Day Ever" on it.
Wow.
Um, in the ICU, I there's a photo my sister and I did art together. I did a drawing that said "Best Day Ever" on it. So I felt like I think I was just, like, channeling this book
I
or
say you
something.
manifested it in,
Yeah.
right? You thought about it and it arrived to you at the right time.
Yeah, really wild. So, yeah, it's about a cute little dog and her boy, and they go to the park, and the dog kind of gets in some trouble, and anyway, I it's a fun book. Um, yeah, so art was a big part of my recovery and like trying to figure out how to be an artist again, and amazingly, like my spinal cord break is just below where I would have lost function to my hands. Um, and when my sister had heard about the accident, she was devastated and just begging God, like, God, you have to let her live and you have to let her keep her hands.
Mm.
And both of those things happened. And the first question, like my sister flew from Milwaukee immediately when she heard that I had been hurt, and she was like the best thing for me in that ICU. We had dance parties together and
It
did
sounds like
art sessions
pretty
together.
amazing sisterly bond.
Yeah, and the ICU just like kicked it up a notch, I think. So yeah, anyway, uh what was I saying about that? Um
Oh, before?
So I would spell things into her hands to communicate because I was intubated, so I
Right.
couldn't really talk. And I the first question I spelled was, "Can I still draw?" And so like that, I mean, it's so important to who I am and what I love to do. So yeah, so and we launched our next collection of cards exactly a year after my accident had happened. We called
Wow.
it the Keep Dancing collection because that's what kept me going in the ICU was we'd turn on the doctors wanted me to like move my arms and hands every hour, and oh, I felt like such a drag, but then I said, "This would be way better with music." So we turned on music and did dance parties, and the nurses would come and dance with us,
Oh,
and, like, I don't know, it's amazing how music can turn a crappy situation into something really great, so,
music,
um
a sister, and a really good mindset.
yeah.
All of those things wrapped together.
Like, just the support of so many communities too. Like, I had letters and cards flooding in a lot from strangers that I had met through Instagram, and through Tiny and Snail, and um, just this is interesting. I've learned since that positive words can spark dopamine in people's brains. So, and dopamine is really important to like doing hard things. So, the words that were being spoken to me through these cards and through the nurses and other people too, that was helping me going. You know, that's what helped me do the next hard thing. And, um, you know, I don't know. I kind of woke up feeling that I had so much support, and there were so many people out there who had invisible wounds, and they don't get the support that I did. Um, and so, like, that's, like, one of the driving things for me with Tiny and Snail is, like, how can we reach those people,
Yeah.
and how can we give them the support that they need?
Yeah.
So a lot of the cards that we design are like encouragement or sympathy cards, and like those feel so meaningful. Um, yeah. Uh,
Well, and again, maybe this is where we're glad we're not on YouTube because both of us have tears in our eyes, but the emotion, the emotion that you're feeling, it's in these. It is in these cards. It is in the mission it sounds like you now have behind them to bring that even just a tiny piece of that support that you had to other people no matter what they're going through because it matters. There is something magical about getting something in the mail, right? That old-fashioned snail mail and not a bill and not a flyer, but something that someone has taken the time to pick out and to handwrite and to send off to you. There's no feeling like it. I was always like that as a kid. I was the one running to the mailbox. I still am the one running there as an adult, even though more often than not, it is not the greatest information there. But it's like people send little pieces of themselves when they send something like this. And it sounds like you just benefited tremendously from it and are hoping to just give back. And that's where I think the beauty of Tiny and Snail, you could feel it. You could see it and you could feel it in the interactions and the way that you have your message online.
yeah,
You
it's all from the
oh,
heart, and so I guess it's just
yeah.
everything I write or make or do is just 100% my heart.
And when people work in that space, like, people can feel it. You can just feel it, even if you're just scrolling, it stops the scroll
Mm.
to see it. And you included in, my beautiful package that I got, and I know people can't see it, but I'm holding it up so that you can. This is my I don't wanna say favorite because I am so enjoying sending the cards, but this little cardstock right here for those listening, the title says How Card Writing Supports Your Mental Health. And it is this beautiful circle slash wheel of everything. You mentioned serotonin, dopamine, like those chemicals in our brain, we can trigger them with the things we think and the things people say to us and the things that we do. And from there, it just keeps going inwards of you could send cards for love, congratulations, thanks, birthdays, holidays, sympathy, for empathy, appreciation, gratitude. I would love for you to talk a little bit more about this,
Sure.
just the inspiration behind it. I mean, clearly we now know why card writing is so important to you and Tiny and Snail, but I'd love if you could talk about this amazing little card that comes in the package.
Y
It's usually up on my bulletin board that's right
Oh,
there, but
nice.
it's in my hands for right now.
Thank you. Yeah, so about a year ago, maybe a little longer, I was doing a lot of research about the mental health aspect of card writing because I thought there's something here, you know? And so I started looking into it, and It's really funny. I feel like not very many people talk about how important card writing can be or letter writing can be for
Yeah.
mental health. But in some studies, it's like the best intervention, the longest lasting intervention that you can do to boost your mental health. It can be extremely powerful for, you know, combating loneliness and it's not just for the person who writes, but it's also for the recipient. So it's like this
Yes.
really beautiful kind of tool that we have to use. And as I was doing all this research and like learning about, our brain chemicals, serotonin, dopamine, and um, the endorphins and all of that, like I started kind of connecting dots and wanting to put it into a chart. And I Yeah, just through sort of like intuition and, examining like how those different cards made me feel writing them, but then
Mhm.
also like coupling it with sort of the research side of what happens. For example, like serotonin, the love or it's one of like the love chemicals, other than oxytocin, and it makes us happy. Um, and it's like the opposite of being angry. So when you lack serotonin, you're more irritable and angry. And something I realized was like, when I'm a little cranky with my husband, if I sit down and write him a love card, things turn around pretty quick. 'Cause I start, like, listing his positive qualities and being grateful for all of the things he does for
Right.
me, and, so, that's just an example of
Yeah.
using the chart, and, yeah, uh, like, empathy and gratitude are hugely important for our brains,
Mhm.
and they're one of the quickest ways we can turn things around for ourselves, um So, yeah, and I actually really love the size of card that we do. It unfortunately, they're hard to find frames for, but the size is, like, really intimate, and
Yeah.
I if you don't have a ton to say, you know, it's kinda nice that you can fill up a space pretty quickly, and after researching about the writing, I was like, "Wow," like, this this is something I wanna talk about, like, I think there's a chance to alienate some people, but there's also a chance that, like, we might inspire some people too to actually embrace this, and, like so now, especially when I'm designing the cards, I kind of I have a philosophy about, like, you know, they're pretty, open-ended so that and people tell us that they kind of leave a space for them to put some words inside.
Yeah.
And that's why we don't put any words in our cards because like ultimately the best part is like a handwritten note.
Yes.
And um but I hope that my art and my sister art too can gently lead a person to that spot because I think we're up against so much today of like so many reasons to just like put off the card for another day, you know?
Y
So I'm hoping that like the cards can be exciting enough that it can help you come to your desk and write to somebody who needs it. And after learning all that mental health stuff, like I feel like it just doubles the effects for when I'm writing a card. Like I really feel it, you know? Like
Yeah.
and it's funny because like almost every time I underestimate how much better I'm gonna feel
Yeah.
after I read that card. So
Yeah.
yeah, they're just amazing.
They are, and I think we could have so much fun geeking out on that research together because I I truly believe the same, and I've researched the same. There's so many benefits, physical benefits, cognitive benefits, mental benefits for reading books, for writing in notebooks, and for sending letters and cards, and I think they just combine so beautifully for me. And what really blew my mind when I first started reading it was that we can actually change those chemicals in our brain. I didn't know that. I just assumed you had what you had unless, you took something to
Mm,
make it better. And so knowing that the things that we can do, the things we say to ourselves, the way we talk to others can change that and then literally change how we feel. That is so powerful. Like you said, for the writer, but also the person on the receiving end of it. Have
mhm.
you read Your Brain on Art?
No,
Oh, I'll
that
send you
sounds
the
like
link
a great title.
when we're done. It's beautiful. The authors' names are escaping me. I want to say it's like Magnuson. It's two authors, and I think one of them's name's Ivy. And I should have known before I recommended it, but I'll send you it. It is a book that really explores the science-based changes that happen in your brain when you are creative, and creativity
Wow.
defined in a very broad way, whether it's reading or writing or painting or whatever
Yeah.
creativity means for you. That's why I just loved the way that you set this up, because it's so much more than just sending a card. It it
Yeah.
is it is so much more than that. It can transform so many people in so many ways. And as you mentioned, I think my favorite part is the size of the card, because it's an
Mm.
unexpected card. Like when you get something in the mail, you've got bills are these longer rectangles, and you've got some cards that are these bigger cards, but these are just special because the size is a little bit different. But I really, really love the minis.
Oh.
Love the minis. And I haven't sent a mini in a mail. I've strategically left them in places. I
Nice.
left one for my daughter to find unexpectedly, and it's just such a treat,
Oh.
to be on the giving and the receiving end of these. And so I'm so glad that you're really focusing on the why, right? That research and that information of how it can help us, how it can change the chemicals, why we can send them. I think if more people knew what it really could do from the science mind-based way, then people would be sending cards all the time. We wouldn't be abandoning this old-fashioned snail
Mm.
mail, and we would be doing it even more. And you
Yeah.
have a collection of cards, kind of the 16, right? The
Yep.
16 cards that people could send, ASAP. Do you want to talk a little bit about those?
Sure. Yeah, those are so it's called the Essential 16. And those are our best-selling 16 cards, which means two things. People love the art and also they're really versatile cards. So, yeah, I just there's so many different ways that you could use these cards. Like I I've been writing to my daughter every Sunday and I've realized that like I can send or, like, I can write in most of those cards to her. There might be 1 or 2 that I'll send to somebody else, but, it just makes it super easy, and I don't know, my thing is, like, note cards, like, kind of plain note cards never really did the trick for me, like, I think making it a more beautiful experience, and it makes it way more exciting, and, it's, like, a better place to start from, I guess.
Yeah.
Um Obviously, you can write to anybody in any card. You can write on a napkin to somebody, and it still is meaningful. Um, but, I think that beauty actually really helps us, and, that's
Yeah.
why I work so hard on the designs, and, I think art is really important, so, um yeah, you could use these cards, like, sprinkle them around your house, and if you are inspired to write to somebody when you see one of the cards, like, do it, you know? Or you could do 16 days of writing to somebody or writing to people, or yeah, there's just so many different things you could do with these cards, which is kind of fun. And then we also include a little guide to sort of our philosophy about card writing and um, why it's so cool for mental health and I forget what else is in there. Oh, little tips and tricks on like, how to start a card writing practice if
Yeah.
you haven't written a card in a while.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
I love that. I honestly did not think about sprinkling these throughout my own home first. Right now, they're on a shelf that is next to my desk and they're stacked up, but I can't enjoy them that way. Like if they were sprinkled around my house, I could enjoy them for a little while
Yeah.
before I then doubled the enjoyment by sending them to someone else. I didn't even think of that. And they're so beautiful that they are like these beautiful prints that could just be beautifying your home while they wait for whoever they're
Yeah.
sending off to. I'm totally taking these out of the pile and putting them
Oh,
everywhere
good.
today, Lee.
Oh, good. Yeah, and that's another thing I keep in mind when I'm designing the cards. Like, I often phrase them sort of like mantras a little bit, where like it can sit in a space for a long time and like keep inspiring you. Um, and it's like functional art, I guess. Yeah. So I'm glad
I
that
love it.
you'll enjoy that.
And as I'm like literally pacing through them because I think that the two favorites that I love, well, I love the one that mentions books, of course, but there's one, listeners, just imagine this beautiful pink kind of color. There's like a beautiful fall leaf and it says, "You are a magic maker." I think that one's going to go in my kitchen. And then there's another one. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful floral print and it just says in different fonts, "Look for the light, look for the light, look for the light." And I think that one's going to go by the coffee maker because I think that's good. It's a good message to have in the morning. My mind is kind of spinning of where I'm going to put my in. And then what a great reminder, to pluck it off of the shelf and then send it out to someone. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
Oh, good. Yay.
I love it. And those 16 cards, I also love that you give suggestions of who those 16 people might be because at first you think, "Oh, I can send it to anyone." But then when you sit down and you try to kind of think of them, you give alternatives to maybe people that I hadn't thought of that could
Mm,
appreciate the card, like the "just because I appreciate you because someone is a good listener," a congratulations card. There are some of the typical kind of things that we might send, but then you've got a card, an encouragement to a mom of young kids, right? Or just someone that you love dearly. Maybe it's not a special occasion. So I appreciate that you give suggestions for those 16 because then at least for me writing it, it makes me think of even more people and even more connections, which I think makes you feel even better,
yeah.
as you're sending them. So I love the philosophy and you have in your kind of outline of 16. I love what you said. And it said, "The world desperately needs more love letters." So my sister and I are on a mission to make mail as beautiful, fun, and easy as we can. It's just it's a beautiful idea. It's a beautiful for both the writer and the receiver. And who wouldn't want to look at these cards all the time? They're gorgeous. Ah,
Oh,
I
thank
love
you.
it. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming on and telling us about your story, telling us more about Tiny and Snail. Where can listeners find you online? Maybe your website, your social media, where they could grab Best Day Ever too, if they wanted to
Yeah.
see that picture book.
Um, our website is tinyandsnail.com. We are on Instagram at tiny_and_snail. Uh, we mostly hang out on Instagram. Things get posted to Facebook, but we're pretty terrible about keeping up with that. My book Best Day Ever is hi Ellie. Do you want to say hi?
Yes, please.
Come here. Do you want to say hi? Come here.
Hi. Hi there.
Can you say hello?
Hi. Good
Do you like
morning.
do you like reading books?
Yes. Hi.
This is
Oh,
Stephanie.
so
She loves reading books.
beautiful. That morning look.
Yep.
Oh, I love it. It's even better than the thank you video. I get to see you in person. Hi, sweetheart.
Um,
What a perfect way to end a call. I will make sure that I put the website and all of your social media handles. I'm going to put links to the cards I love the most along with that 16 collection so that we can make it as easy as possible. And hopefully, after listening, people will be inspired to send some cards, send some letters, and literally change the chemicals in our brain in the
yeah,
process, making
amen.
everybody feel really, really good. Thank you
Aw.
so much for coming on today. I so appreciate it and for bringing along your fun little guests too. It was such a wonderful joy to talk with you
Yeah.
today.
Oh my gosh, I loved meeting you. Thanks, Stephanie.
Oh,
I'm
you're
looking
welcome.
looking forward to it.
Thank you. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of the Get Literate podcast, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. Plus, if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing life, like bonus podcast episodes, bibliotherapy book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking challenges, live events, giveaways, and much, much more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all of the previous content too. You can learn more at getliterate.co. And one more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish and notebookish community too. Thanks for listening.